Very good. So again, welcome to today's 1 hour webinar session, free webinar hosted by preventionpluswellness.com, located here in beautiful, beautiful St. Augustine, Florida. If you've not been here, if you've not visited this historic and gorgeous town on the east coast of Florida, northern part of the state, please do, when you have an opportunity, when it's safe, do come visit us here. And it's a beautiful place, historic, gorgeous, fascinating place to visit, to learn about history and to see the beautiful city, the architecture, and learn about this city, as well as the beautiful ocean and intercoastal water that we have along here. So my name is Dr. Chudley Wirch. I'm president and founder at Prevention Plus Wellness, LLC. And today we're going to spend an hour together. Hopefully, if you have the time, thank you all for joining us. We have a sold out webinar. This is one of our most popular webinars that we host. I am recording today's session, so no fears, no worries. Everybody who's registered will get a link to this recorded session, which you are welcome to share widely with others in your region or state, even nation. And we will also send you a PDF of these slides, which you're welcome to share as well. The topic, as you can see, one session: alcohol, vaping, marijuana, and opioid use prevention, introduction to PPW, or Prevention Plus Wellness programs. So also, everyone will be sent at the end of today's session, sometime today, a certificate for 1 hour CEU for spending time with us. So if you can't find that at the end of today, do check your spam folders. Because of the attachment, it's likely that you'll find it there. So that's what I'll be doing at the end of today. You'll be receiving a certificate of completion for 1 hour CEU, a PDF of today's slides, a link of the recorded session. All of those will be yours, and please do share them widely with others, your colleagues and friends in your regions. So this session is yours. We will be covering a good portion of a good number of slides, but we will open it up for Q&A at the end of today's session. If you have questions, if something doesn't make sense, because I do go through a lot of content very quickly, feel free to click on your live chat. You also have a Q&A option here in this Zoom platform, and you can send me any questions, any comments that you like. We've got a number of people raising their hands. Let me see what this is about. Let me click on this and find out. We've got some people raising their hands. I'm not sure why, but hopefully you're not having any problems. I just checked the system. If you are having problems, check your end. It's likely that you're not having a good internet connection. Again, no worries. You will be receiving a PDF of the slides. You will be receiving a link to this recorded session. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and dive right into it. There are 4 objectives for today's session. Let me just see, I just need to move my little toolbar out of the way. Having a little problem with grabbing that toolbar. There it is. So these are the objectives for today. We'll be examining alcohol, vaping, marijuana, and opioid prevention plus wellness as PPW screening and brief interventions today. Together, we'll also look at the differences between typical substance use prevention programs, particularly evidence-based programs, and prevention plus wellness programs, which I think are quite unique and different in many respects. Thirdly, we're going to explore the theory as well as the research that supports both brief as well as multi-health behavior interventions. And lastly, we'll look at and describe options and settings and adaptations for implementing and evaluating prevention plus wellness programs. And again, thank you all for joining us for this session. And this is your time. So however you want to use it is up to you. I do want you to pay close attention, especially if you've not joined us for previous webinars, because we'll be covering a lot of content. And if you want to share something from your region as a prevention and health specialist with others, something that's working, something that's not, anything on your mind, it's an extraordinarily challenging time for all of you. God bless you for what you do. It's an honor for me to spend some time with you. If we can help you in any way, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. To start today's session, let's find out a little bit about your interests and your needs by completing this very brief 4-question poll. So you'll just see it in a minute. It'll pop up in front of you. You'll need to scroll down to answer all the 4 questions. I believe all 4 of them are multiple choice, so you can answer more than one, you can provide more than one answer for each of these questions. And they are, which substance use topics are you most interested in when addressing prevention programs? When providing prevention programs, you could answer any of those. And please do participate so we get to have a sense of who's online with us today. Question number 2, which prevention program characteristics are most important to you? And if you'll scroll down farther, you'll get to question number 3, which is, what age groups are you most interested in addressing with prevention programs? And lastly, number 4, what types of prevention program implementation training options do you prefer? So you'll need to scroll down to see all 4 questions. Please do take a moment and answer that. I'm going to give everybody a chance to do that, a couple of minutes. And the more that answer, the better, because then we'll have a better sense of who's online with us today and can tailor the training a little bit to your particular interests and needs. I'll address them as best as I can. And so right now we've got over half of you having voted or answered the poll. So we'll wait a little bit longer. Now over 6 in 10 have done so. That's awesome. Wait just a little bit longer. Oh, we got over 7 in 10 of you have completed the poll. That's tremendous. Thank you all for your participation. Just another 30 seconds or so. Make sure everybody who wants to fill out the poll has a chance to do that. We're almost up to 3 out of 4 of you having completed the poll, and that's a great amount of participation. I thank you all for doing that. You guys are great. And we're almost up to 8 out of 10, almost up to 80% of you having participated. Let's see if we can do that. Let's see if we can get 80% of you, or 8 out of 10 participating. That just means we need another 1 or 2 people to complete the poll. Let's just wait another couple of seconds so that we can let everybody participate. And 80%, awesome. Okay, I'm going to end the polling. Thank you so much for participating. And so let's look at your results. So let me see. I want to share these results with you. And there we go. So you should be able to see these in just a moment. Question number 1, which substance use topics are you most interested in addressing in prevention programs? The winner is, I am absolutely amazed by this, opioid. So we've got a rather unique group here today that's focused on opioids, obviously a national problem and one of many substance use issues that we're addressing. And clearly, because you can see behind that, it closely followed by marijuana and alcohol and e-cigarettes. So opioid, definitely, fascinatingly, we are addressing all of those top issues today in this introduction of PPW programs: alcohol, e-cigarettes, cannabis, and opioids. So you're in the right spot for today for seeing what's available from Prevention Plus Wellness to address opioids and these other substances among your young people. Question 2, which prevention program characteristics most interesting to you? Evidence-based and evidence-informed. Of course, that's what we'll be addressing today. And then that's followed by, can be provided in person or online. That's understandable given the pandemic. And you will learn about how all Prevention Plus Wellness programs can be provided in person and optionally online. So you have the protocols to do that. Third question. What age groups are you most interested in? It looks like most of you middle school, followed by high school and children, and then young adults. Prevention Plus Wellness programs address all of those age groups, from children, the young adolescents, older adolescents, and young adults. And last question, what types of prevention program implementation training options do you prefer? Live webinars, that's what we're doing today. I'm sure you're very familiar with that. Since the pandemic, a lot of people have been offering and taking webinars, and so that makes sense to me. But that's followed by in-person training. Of course, looking forward to the days when we can get back to in-person training and having that wonderful interaction with each other. And that's followed by a live interactive online training. So we do offer all those different types of training options. So thank you so much for sharing and responding to the poll, and that helps understand your interest and your needs. So today, what we're going to start off first looking at are the Prevention Plus Wellness. Again, that's PPW programs and the components. We'll start with the sport PPW program. This is our evidence-based program for youth, high school, middle school, and elementary school version. This is evidence-based. Now, when we use the term evidence-based, as we describe it, as we look at it and consider it, that means our programs have been, these programs have been rigorously evaluated. The outcomes have been published in scientific refereed journal articles. And then and only then have they been listed in a number of evidence-based registries. So we'll describe all of that more in detail later today. So sport PPW is evidence-based, proven to prevent alcohol, tobacco, and even cannabis, while increasing physical activity among general population youth, as well as drug-using youth. PPW, sport PPW targets alcohol primarily, as well as other drugs secondarily, and promotes physical activity and sports, healthy eating, and breakfast, sleep, and to a lesser extent, stress control. Single session screening and brief intervention can be implemented in less than 50 minutes. It's implemented with PowerPoint slides. You get a program manual, a physical manual, and you get a digital download of your slides and all your reproducible materials. So it's a single purchase price. Once you buy it, it's all yours. You don't need to get anything else. The more you implement it, the less expensive it becomes per youth, and it ends up being pennies per implementation once you start implementing it to larger numbers of youth. It is a scripted program with scripts to provide it, protocols to provide it to youth individually or one-on-one, as well as a group, and new protocols to provide it online live to one youth or a group of youth, group defined as 2 or more, as well as by video and by telephone if necessary. Sport PPW is based on a marketing theory that targets positive images, the behavior image model, which we'll be talking a little bit more about today. It includes optional parent material, so you get a separate, completely separate intervention in your sport program, a parent letter, and 4 weekly flyers. That's a separate intervention. And during our 2-hour live online training, if you do choose to take the training for any of our programs, you will learn more about how to use the entire program, as well as this optional parent intervention. Reproducible materials with the digital download and online protocols, which I mentioned. That's the sport PPW program for youth. Our parallel program for young adults, which could be college students or young adults in a community, even military, men and women, young adults, is the InShape PPW program, also evidence-based, proven to prevent alcohol, marijuana, including heavy alcohol and heavy marijuana use, drinking and driving, and increasing a number of health-related behaviors and health-related quality of life among young adults. It targets mostly alcohol and tobacco, and physical activity, healthy nutrition, and sleep and stress control. Again, single session, a little bit longer than sport, can be implemented in 60 minutes using slides, using your program manual script to young adults one-on-one or in a group, now in person as well as online, based on a marketing theory of positive image, includes reproducible digital download materials. Then we have what we call our evidence-informed program. These are modifications or adaptations of sport and in shape. They use the same positive and successful behavior image conceptual model, as well as screening and brief intervention model. We call them evidence-informed because they've not been evaluated, but keep in mind, all prevention plus wellness programs are screening and brief interventions, which are defined as evidence-based practices by a number of national and international organizations, including SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration. So the vaping PBW program, screening and brief intervention, evidence-based practice, founded on the evidence-based program sport. Obviously, by the title, it addresses e-cigarette use, primarily, along with, just like sport, physical activity, healthy eating and breakfast, sleep and stress control. Single session, we've got versions for high school, middle school, elementary school, implemented with slides. You have your program manual, you have your digital download of your slides and all your reproducible materials, same positive image conceptual model, and protocols for providing it not just in person, but also online. That's our vaping prevention plus wellness program. A program parallel to that, marijuana prevention plus wellness, evidence informed. Obviously, the focus is on cannabis use, prevention plus wellness. All the rest is the same, like sport, like in shape. Then we have an opioid prevention plus wellness program. I think of particular interest to many of you who are focused on that today. Evidence-based screening brief intervention practice, but this program is really founded on the evidence-based in shape program. It targets, as you can tell by the title, opioid misuse, and it also promotes physical activity, healthy nutrition and eating, sleep, and stress control. Single session. Now we got 3 versions of opioid PBW, one for adolescents, one for high-risk young men, one for high-risk young women. So these are high-risk populations identified by the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration. That's why we developed versions to address those high-risk populations of adolescents, and then young men and young women. That's the opioid PBW program. Now, let's take a look at typical substance use prevention programs demonstrated in the left-hand column, excuse me, and compare that to prevention plus wellness program characteristics in the right-hand program. If you look at typical prevention programs in the left-hand column, you'll see that most prevention programs address one, sometimes more substance use behaviors. They are multiple session in nature. They can be anywhere from 6, 10, 15, 20 more sessions. They are largely educational in nature, and they address substance use risk, and the better ones address resistance skills. If you look at the right-hand column to see how does that compare to PPW programs, well, number one, prevention plus wellness programs not only address substance use risk, but also CDR or chronic disease risk behaviors. What do I mean by that? I'm talking about obesity, sedentary lifestyle, excessive screen time, poor nutrition, inadequate sleep, uncontrolled stress. How are those addressed in PPW programs? By focusing on the opposite side of that coin, which is promoting wellness behaviors, physical activity, nutrition, breakfast, sleep, stress control. That's how, and of course, addressing substance use avoidance within those. That's how PPW programs are unique. They're what's considered integrated multi-risk behavior interventions. At the same, remember, they're also single session screening and brief interventions. PBW programs, single session, they're more motivational than educational. It's not that education doesn't take place. It's not that young people don't, because they do learn about how substance use interferes with positive behaviors and desired images of themselves in the future, engage in the wellness behaviors. But the focus is really more on motivation, motivating youth for change and initiating that change through multiple behavior goal setting and increasing self-regulation skills. Lastly, number 4, as compared to typical prevention programs. Prevention plus wellness programs address substance use risk, but also self-control, self-regulation skills, and use desired future images as a mechanism for motivating desires to change their habits. Also, unique aspects. Now, it's not that you'll never see some of these things in typical prevention programs do not address these things. Like number 5, prevention plus wellness programs promote habits that improve both mental and physical health. A little bit more about that later. Number 6, they include multiple behavior goal setting, which means not just setting goals to avoid substance use, but also increasing protective wellness behaviors. Number 7, PPW programs are scripted. That increases program implementation fidelity and ease of use. Number 7, PPW programs promote tailoring, unlike other evidence-based programs that really want you to implement them exactly like they were developed during the research phase. We believe that a certain level of tailoring is important and even critical in certain settings, and all of that is addressed in our 2-hour online live program implementer training. Number 9, there are optional ways to implement prevention plus wellness programs. As already discussed, you can provide them to youth or young adults one-on-one or in a group, in person or online. That gives you a lot of flexibility to make sure you get this evidence-based, evidence-informed prevention plus wellness message to your youth, even in the face of a pandemic. And lastly, PPW programs include immediate pre-post built-in assessment surveys, evaluation surveys, and we even provide a free program analysis, evaluation analysis, if you wish to use that service. So how does PPW programs address not just substance use, but also chronic disease risk behaviors? Well, the chronic disease risk behaviors that are addressed, and we just take the high school versions of our programs as an example, obesity, excessive screen time, physical inactivity is addressed in our programs by promoting physical activity and sports participation. Environmental influences for sedentary living is addressed by promoting awareness of environmental influences, particularly friends and family. Unhealthy eating is addressed by promoting healthy breakfast and nutrition. Lack of sleep is addressed by promoting at least 8 hours of sleep on a regular basis. And of course, substance use, whether that be alcohol, e-cigarettes, marijuana, opioid use, is addressed by promoting avoidance of those substances. And lastly, uncontrolled stress is addressed by promoting relaxation, regular relaxation strategies. So that's how prevention plus wellness programs integrate and address more than substance use, but also chronic disease risk. The practice model that's used in all prevention plus wellness programs, rather than educational, it's motivational. It's the screening and brief intervention model. 3 steps for implementation. Step number 1, you screen youth for their current health habits, not just substance use, but wellness behaviors. That increases awareness of a range of their health habits at that particular time. That's usually done with a self-assessment screening survey. Step number 2, you address each of those behaviors, each of those health behaviors and risk behaviors. You provide feedback to youth about those habits. You use positive image communication, showing your PowerPoint slides, and that increases motivation for change because the focus is on cueing or triggering positive images youth have of themselves and of their peers engage in these wellness behaviors and being more fit and active and successful and healthy, etc. Thirdly, you capitalize on that increased motivation by having youth set goals to avoid substance use and increase protective wellness behaviors. Multiple behavior goal setting, very, very critical. That's the self-regulation piece. Youth can then learn to set goals and monitor them and initiate that behavior change process, which is so very important. That's what we're after. We want youth to improve their lifestyles. That includes avoiding substance use and increasing protective wellness behaviors. What's the evidence that supports the effectiveness of screening and brief interventions? There were a couple of amazingly positive reviews of research. I like reviews of research because they look at a number of studies that have been done over a certain period of time. And you look at the left-hand block, there was a review that was published in 2015 that showed that screening and brief interventions are effective for even up to a year after the brief intervention, even as brief as a single session, for both adolescents and young adults. And if goal setting was a component, that was a particularly effective strategy. On the right-hand side, we've done a number of studies of prevention plus wellness programs that showed similarly affects multiple health behavior effects, even a year after the single session screening and brief intervention prevention plus wellness programs. More support for screening and brief intervention as evidence-based practice comes from SAMHSA. SAMHSA supports screening and brief intervention. They've even developed their own model for it. It's called SBIRT, Screening, Brief Intervention, and Referral to Treatment. CDC, or Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, also supports alcohol screening and brief intervention in primary care settings for young people. The World Health Organization supports alcohol screening and brief intervention. The National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism supports alcohol screening and brief intervention for youth. The American Academy of Pediatrics supports SBIRT. That's again, screening, brief intervention, referral to treatment for youth. And NIDA, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, supports adolescent substance use screening for screening and brief intervention. So you got these different federal, national, international organizations all identifying screening, brief intervention as evidence-based practices. That's what prevention plus wellness programs are. But what is the evidence for prevention plus wellness programs as an effective screening and brief intervention? Let's just take a look at the outcomes, published outcomes on the sport prevention plus wellness program. These are peer-refereed published research studies in these scientific journals. And if we look at them across the studies, you'll see sort of a thumbnail or a synopsis of the effects of various studies showing that the single session sport prevention plus wellness program significantly decreased among young people alcohol use initiation, but also quantity and frequency, even binge drinking and alcohol problems, while significantly increasing physical activity and reducing cigarette use, with some effects even a year later from that single session sport PPW program, and reducing binge drinking, smoking, and marijuana use, and increasing physical activity among drug using youth even a year later, increasing parent-youth communication. Then there was a study of just 3 of the 4 sport PPW parent flyers, and those were found to be effective in reducing alcohol use problems, marijuana use, and increasing parent-youth communication. And lastly, we had a study where we translated sport, I shouldn't say we, it's some colleagues in Turkey, translated sport into a Turkish language, implemented in a controlled trial, and found that even among Turkish youth in Istanbul, Turkey, the sport program significantly increased a number of indices of health, including physical activity, nutrition, sleep, and mental health. Those are some of the effects published in scientific journals. And because of those, sport and In Shape are listed on evidence-based registries. I'll show that in a minute. But I wanted to show you this first because I think it's really important to hear from youth themselves in their own words. So our post-test survey includes 2 open-ended items for youth to identify what did they like best and least about their prevention plus wellness program. And here we are able to collect qualitative data. And if you look at the responses from youth, these are actual written responses from, I think, high school youth out of a number of high schools in California. You could see the breadth of the positive effects on preventing substance use, on improving self-esteem, on improving perceived body image, on just having fun, on promoting wellness, skills to set goals, a lot of very, very important knowledge, skills, and confidence are gained according to actual reports from participating youth. So that's the qualitative data. And of course, we do have published studies of all of our programs, that sport, that's in shape, and you could learn more about these. All of these are described in more detail on our website, preventionpluswellness.com. So these are all published papers. And because of that, sport and in shape, as I had mentioned earlier, evidence-based programs, and because of the research and them being listed on a number of evidence-based registries. These are just a handful of them. There's many more. You could find all of this out again on our website, preventionpluswellness.com. And just as an example, Blueprints for Healthy Youth Development, great evidence-based registry. NREP, the now defunct NREP. I like Results First Clearinghouse database because it's actually a compilation of, I think, 8 evidence-based registries, and then there's some others there. So sport and in shape are listed as evidence-based practices on those registries. Now, as I had mentioned earlier, one of the unique aspects of Prevention Plus Wellness programs is they target not just substance use risk, but also self-control skills. And that's because all Prevention Plus Wellness programs are founded on the unique behavior image model. It's a conceptual model, a theoretical roadmap, if you will, for developing brief interventions that integrate the prevention of substance use or other risk behaviors with the promotion of healthy wellness habits and attitudes. There's 2 components to the behavior image model. The first assumption is that you can use positive images to increase motivation for change. And then secondly, you can use multiple behavior goal setting to increase self-regulation or self-control skills among youth. Prevention Plus Wellness programs are similar to typical prevention programs in that they address substance use risk, but then they're quite a bit different because of the kinds of risks that they address. So for example, the core message of Prevention Plus Wellness programs is that substance use is a barrier to each of the targeted healthy habits. So substance use, whether it be alcohol, opioids, cannabis, vaping, e-cigarettes, interferes with physical activity, sports, nutrition, breakfast, sleep, stress control, as well as it harms your fitness and health, and it causes life problems. That there are myths associated with substance use that are addressed, that most youth do not use these substances. That's the social norm message. What are some healthy alternatives to using substances? We want youth to choose for themselves and to plan ahead before being offered substances. And lastly, we provide recommendations for increasing wellness, which includes avoiding substance use, but also improving or continuing wellness habits in their lives. Now, let me give you some concrete examples so that you have a better understanding of what I'm talking about. How do we address substance use? How do we integrate substance use with chronic disease risk behaviors and promoting wellness behaviors? So first of all, let's take a look at a sample of some of the messaging and slides in the Sport PBW program, high school version. Here's one slide. You can see the messages: active life and alcohol don't mix. In fact, alcohol and drugs harms or hurts relationships, sports, yourself, energy level, and how you do in work and school. And then you've got a very positive image of a young person, a female in this case, playing soccer. So that's what you've got. You've got these very, very brief positive messages that reinforce what you're saying to them using the program script. And then we show images. We want to have young people see models of themselves, positive models. So we show both gender, different ethnicities, different types of positive activities in the slides. Here's a slide showing the linkage between alcohol and marijuana and nutrition and how it robs your body of vitamins and minerals. It leads to weight gain, saps your energy. So important for success in sports, physical activities in life. At the same time, you see this very positive illustration of young people, healthy, happy, eating healthy foods. That's a message in the sport program for high school related to nutrition. Here's another message about alcohol, tobacco, other drugs. Disrupts sound sleep, stops deep sleep patterns. So important to an active and high energy life. You see how we're linking substance use as being harmful and counterproductive to these positive behaviors and images. And then there's just generalized risk messages, which you would see probably in other substance use programs, but really important related to things that are most related to youth, and that is how alcohol and drugs put you at risk for embarrassing yourself in front of friends. Nothing more motivating to a young person than that, but also helping, but also related to getting hurt, getting sick, getting into trouble, etc. Let's take a look at some sample messages in the vaping PPW program, but this case we'll look at the elementary school aged version. And so you can see the difference right away with the illustrations. The kids are much younger, happy, healthy nonetheless. And we're linking the key to being fit and healthy, both in mind and body, is lots of physical activity and staying away from e-cigarettes as well as regular cigarettes. Here's a message for the young kids with regard to e-cigarette use or vaping and nutrition. E-cigarettes use candy and fruit flavors appealing to youth. Vaping can reduce the body's use of vitamins and minerals. Withdrawal symptoms can make it hard to eat healthy. You might need to describe, obviously, a little bit more about what withdrawal symptoms is, a little bit about addiction, so that the young kids would understand that final message. Here's a great picture of kids, young kids having fun. Two messages here. Studies show most kids do not use e-cigarettes. That's a social norm message. And then they can increase their social skills to say no to offers by practicing them like any sport or any other kind of skill. Here's a very important message of linking a healthy brain, body, energy, looking, feel good, doing better in school sports, and a recommendation: stay away from e-cigarette use. Now let's take a look at sample of the marijuana prevention plus wellness program middle school version. So these illustrations will show more of a younger adolescent version. And here we show active lifestyle and cannabis don't mix. Marijuana hurt your brain, your lungs, and therefore how well you do in school and sports. Here's another message about linking cannabis and marijuana to nutrition for young adolescents. It leads to eating junk foods, weight gain, sapping your drive to do well, and spend time with families and friends, and withdrawal symptoms again. Here's a great message about how cannabis works against what you need and what you get from regular sleep, because cannabis harms your ability to think clearly. It lowers your grades. It increases your depression, your anxiety. It drains your energy needed to live actively, which you would gain from getting adequate sleep. And here's a generalized message about how marijuana can harm you and cause life problems, again, with getting into trouble with parents, with friends, affecting your brain, how well you do in school with your grades, lungs, physical fitness, etc. Lastly, one more example. How does the opioid PPW program message look? And this is the adolescent version. Now, there's a little bit more content in the opioid PPW program. There's a little bit more instruction we felt was recommended and necessary. So we've got non-medical use of opioids and the association between using them and trying to maintain a physically active life. And it's really difficult because, number one, opioid misuse causes drowsiness, mental fog, nausea, constipation, decreases energy level, et cetera, et cetera. So this is how it harms physical activity. Here's how non-medical use of opioids interfere with eating healthy and nutrition in general. And there's a great looking healthy picture of a young person eating. And here's a great slide on how opioid misuse can cause stress and cause additional stress in your life, including worries and unhappiness, a greater sensation of physical pain, compulsion to abuse other drugs, mental fog, depression, dependency, overdose and death, etc. We also have in the opioid PPW program some information about medication-assisted treatment. This was something that was deemed very critical and important to the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration. So we do have some instruction on what MAT is, again, medication-assisted treatment, and nalzone. And then that's the opioid PPW program. This slide just highlights how PPW addresses self-control skills. It does so by increasing self-regulation skills, by setting and monitoring behavior goals. Those goals are to avoid alcohol, opioids, e-cigarettes, cannabis, whatever, depending which program you're using, but also improving one or more protective wellness habits and making it a public contract, which increases motivation for change. You could learn more about how PPW programs work by looking at our logic model on our website, preventionpluswellness.com. How does PPW address peer and desired future images? I'm gonna have to pick up the pace because I'm running a little bit late, I'm sorry. Why is it important? What's the evidence for the effectiveness of positive image? Well, there's three areas of support. One, conceptually, in other words, theory shows that positive images like positive selves theory, or even Bandura's social cognitive theory, highlights the role of modeling, particularly positive models, for influencing young people's behavior and decision making. Secondly, lots of research showing the importance of positive images, including research in self-concept, prototype images, possible selves, and positive identity show that images, particularly positive images that youth have of themselves, of their peers, of themselves in the future, influences their decision-making with regard to substance use and healthy behaviors. Lastly, there's been decades of practical experience in the field of marketing and advertising by the largest companies of the world that use appealing images to sell their products successfully. They don't use negative images. They use positive, appealing images like the one on the right. Are we having blank yet? And so they use, companies use positive images to sell beer, to sell, I should say, alcohol, to sell tobacco, to sell everything from cars to clothing, because it works, because positive images are very, very influential in selling products, and what Prevention Plus Wellness programs are using these images to sell a lifestyle, avoiding substance use, engaging in wellness behaviors. How does this work? How do you create these messages using the behavior image model? The goal of these messages is to trigger or to cue a desired mental picture of themselves engaging in wellness behaviors in the future or of their peers, and then how substance use interferes with that. The key is to use vivid image terms as well as illustrations. Two-step process. Step number one, you present the positive images and other benefits of a wellness behavior. Step number two, you show how substance use interferes with that. Let me give you an example. Step number one, here's the positive images. I'll just read the statement for you. Young people who engage in regular physical activity tend to feel more, and the image terms are underlined: energetic, sleep better, and look more active, fit, and confident. Image terms, they elicit an unconscious image of themselves in the future. Very, very motivating. Other outcomes included sleeping better, and of course the target behavior is physical activity, and the individuals are young people, and we have a nice illustration of a young female engaged in some aerobic exercise, probably during winter. Step number two, linking how substance use is a barrier or harms. Here's an example: marijuana use can reduce your level of energy needed to participate in regular exercise and achieve your fitness goals of being in shape, looking good, and feeling fit and active. So you just show how a substance like marijuana or other drugs interferes with that wellness behavior. How does prevention plus wellness improve physical and mental health? By addressing substance use. And these are the more prevalent substance use behaviors. Ever use, you can see alcohol is the most prevalent, 6 out of 10 ever using alcohol. That's followed by 4 out of 10 vaping, over 1 out of 3 using marijuana, and that's followed by cigarettes and opioids. But also addressing these chronic disease risks, which are so prevalent among young people. 3 out of 4 are not getting adequate sleep. 3 out of 4 are not getting adequate physical activity. 2 out of 3 are not eating breakfast every day of the week. Look at, not even 14% are eating 3 vegetables a day, let alone 5 or 7. And at least 1 out of 5 are getting 3 or more hours of screen time. That, of course, has been increasing according to recent research during the pandemic. There was a great study, a national study, that showed over half of high school students in the country, this was published 2010, had 2 or more risk factors. So it could be substance use, it could be like alcohol and physical inactivity, or marijuana and inadequate nutrition. At least 2 or more, 3, 4, 5 risk factors. This shows that, and the authors of this study recommended interventions that at both the clinical and community, and we recommend school levels, should target multiple risks. Enough of these single risk interventions. Yes, it's important to address opioids, but at the same time, it's important to address other risk factors. And these risk factors are related, they influence each other. That's why we have a prevention plus wellness program that doesn't just address opioid prevention, but also promotes these other positive wellness behaviors. And the authors suggested discussing and teaching young people about how these behaviors are interrelated, how they affect each other, how substance use interferes with wellness behaviors, and wellness behaviors to a certain extent can help prevent substance use. Another way to look at it is to look at the benefits of a healthy lifestyle. That's one where individuals are physically active, regularly eating nutritiously, getting adequate sleep. Just look at number 3 alone. Healthy lifestyle is associated with, according to research, less depression, anxiety, unsafe sex, and less alcohol, tobacco, and illicit drug use. But then all these other things as well: improved physical and mental and quality, self-reported quality of life, improved self-image, self-esteem, greater brain development, greater opportunities to socialize, greater academic success as defined by less suspensions, greater attendance, less dropouts, and more likelihood to attend and complete college, and then less chronic disease. That includes diabetes and heart disease and cancer, stroke, obesity, osteoporosis. There are a couple of great reviews of research. Again, these are multiple studies, and showed that multiple risk behavior interventions are efficacious, they're effective. One in 2014 showed that integrated prevention programs are feasible and may be more effective than discrete programs. Those are programs that focus on just one risk behavior. And then there was a review of research in 2018 that showed that universal school-based interventions that addressed multiple risks could be effective in preventing tobacco, alcohol, illicit drugs, antisocial behavior, and improving physical activity, all in one intervention. Implementation issues with regard to PPW, the left-hand column shows that there's advantages or pros to having a scripted program like Prevention Plus Wellness programs. Makes it easier to implement, reduces time for training, increases fidelity and reliability across program, implementer settings and time, and allows less skilled individuals like youth to even implement Prevention Plus Wellness programs. You do have to have your manual in hand. Prevention Plus Wellness programs, especially the sport program, implemented in all 50 states in just about any setting where you could find youth and young adults, from the military to colleges to schools, after school, in school, with sports, in PE, in recreation, in clubs, in YMCAs and Boys and Girls Clubs, hospitals, faith-based settings, juvenile justice homes, etc. They're brief, they're positive, they're effective. Of course, we've been discussing that so far. 3 options for implementation of Prevention Plus Wellness program. You can provide them alone or in addition to other evidence-based or non-evidence-based prevention, fitness, sports, health programs. Number 2, you can provide them to youth one-on-one or individually or in a group. Number 3, now we have protocols and training to provide them not just in person, but also online. We have a number of adaptations that have expanded our programs from focusing on alcohol largely to e-cigarettes, to marijuana, to opioids. In God's Image is our faith-based program. Sport 2 is our multiple session program. And now our latest program just from last week is Racial Justice Prevention Plus Wellness. I'm really excited about this program. It addresses substance use indirectly because racial discrimination is an influencing factor on youth health and on substance use. Prevention Plus Wellness programs are universal prevention programs designed for all youth. Some organizations are now providing them with high-risk youth, drug-using youth, as a selective or indicated program. They're implemented with everything from children to young adolescents, older adolescents to young adults, in just about any setting imaginable: sports, recreation, wilderness, juvenile justice, in the military. We have follow-up tools now, and we have online protocols. We have training online for 2-hour live online training for implementers, 2-hour online training for training of trainers, 1-hour youth leadership training for those youth that want to provide our programs. And we have built-in evaluation tools. So we have scannable pre-post test, as well as now we have a link online pre-post test. So if you implement your programs online, you have your youth or young adults complete a pre-test online, implement your program, complete a post-test online, all in that single session, and you've collected your immediate pre-post data for evaluation. So let me conclude 4 things. Number 1, PBW programs address alcohol, e-cigarettes, marijuana, opioids, even racial injustice, as well as other chronic disease risks and other unhealthy behaviors by promoting healthy habits. Number 2, there's quite a few differences between PBW programs and typical prevention programs that are, for the most part, advantages are highlights of Prevention Plus Wellness programs and make them more feasible, practical, and cost effective. Number 3, there's research, there's theory, and there's practice that shows that brief interventions and multi-health interventions are effective and can be more effective and have broader effects and be more cost effective than lengthier interventions and interventions that are more focused. Lastly, PBW programs have been adapted and adopted now to address emerging substance use risks, anti-racism, different levels of prevention, different populations and settings and languages, and now even implementing them online. There's our website, preventionpluswellness.com. That's our homepage. Check it out. There's a couple of links there to the catalog of our more popular programs, as well as requesting a sample of one of our programs if you want to check it out a little bit more. All you have to do is go to preventionpluswellness.com and leave your email, and you'll be on the email list. And you could reach out to us here in beautiful St. Augustine, Florida, by emailing us at info at preventionpluswellness.com. Our number here, office number 904-472-5022. Thank you so much. Now, let me pause. We've got 5 or more minutes for Q&A. Let me see if you have any questions, any comments. Was there anything unclear? Do you want to help me address any concerns you might have about our programs? Is there anything going on in your professional life that you want to share, something that's working, something that you're very concerned about? It's a very, very stressful time. So I'm happy to stay as long as you all want to stay for the rest of this session to share and to learn and help each other and support each other. Again, I want to just say thank you all for what you do. God bless you. You're unsung heroes providing for youth and for parents in your regions. You're amazing people. And I'm so blessed to be able to work with you. If we can help in any way, let me be happy to serve you in any way we can. So let's take a look. I don't see any Q&A. I do see somebody is on the chat. So let's take a look. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. You could hear. Again, we have some time. So 3 participants have raised their hands. I don't know what the hand raising is about. That's one thing I haven't really. Oh, okay. So we got a Q&A. So let's see here. Anything about addressing the stress of young people during the pandemic period? Great question. So we don't have a program that addresses stress alone, but we have stress built into stress controls, particularly relaxation strategies, emphasizing those as protective factors in our programs, especially the sport program and all. Actually, our programs for high school have a little bit more of that. The InShape program, Opioid Prevention plus Wellness program, has a little bit more of that as an actual behavioral target. Our Sport 2 program, which has 6 sessions, actually has 1 session just on stress control. So that might be something to be looking into, our Sport 2 program. Unlike our other programs, which all integrate all the behaviors into 1 session, Sport 2 actually has 6 separate lessons and sort of teases out the separate behaviors. So Sport 2 has, by the way, Sport 2, we have a high school, middle school, elementary school version. Sport 2 addresses 3 different types of physical activity in 3 different lessons: moderate aerobic, vigorous exercise, muscle strengthening, 2 different lessons on nutrition, healthy eating, as well as managing weight, and then 1 whole lesson on stress control. So that does address it. I think to a certain extent, we do mention the fact that in our new racial justice prevention plus wellness program, we do highlight the fact that racial discrimination is associated with anxiety, with stress, and with unhealthy behaviors. But I don't believe we're really focusing on the particular ways to address that other than through anti-racism behaviors. Any of these programs, you're welcome to go to our website, preventionpluswellness.com, and request an electronic sample, a redacted electronic sample. We're happy to send you one. Another question. That, by the way, was from, it looks like Bernard, and this question is from Danielle. Our courses, our county's school district is strictly distance learning now. Can this program work for an alternative for a class? All of our programs now include protocols to provide them online. And when we do our 2-hour program implementer training, if you choose to receive that, that's separate from the program. We have a program cost. And if you want to receive 2-hour online training, we do cover how to provide your program online live to 1 youth or 2 or more youth, by video or by telephone. So definitely we've made the adaptation quite a while ago, early back during the pandemic. Back in March and April, we created protocols to provide our programs. Because they're brief, because they're scripted, that all adds to it, makes it even easier. But now we have training and we have protocols. You have the tools to provide your prevention plus wellness programs, whether it's opioid or vaping or marijuana or sport and in shape, which address alcohol or whatever the case might be. We have protocols to provide them to youth online. And that means whatever platform you might be using, whatever video conferencing platform you might be using, Zoom like this one, or Microsoft Teams or Google Classroom, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't really matter. So great questions in the Q&A. Let's go back to live chat, see if there's any questions. Here's one. from, it looks like Eddie. Most youth says it's in their home, and curiosity started them to drink. So I think you're absolutely correct. There's access, easy access to alcohol. It's in the house, it's in the community. Friends can get it very easily. That's definitely an environmental factor. So our programs address environmental factors to the extent that some of them address the role of friends and family in the decision-making of healthy and unhealthy behaviors, but we also address it by getting them to think about what's important to them in their life, what are the desired images, future images of themselves as values, and to start setting some goals to make sure they continue to avoid alcohol and other drug use in the future, regardless of its availability. But that's a very, very true and telling statement from Eddie. A lot of and it's not just the availability, it's the perception of availability that will drive use quite a bit. And the perception of social norms, if they perceive their friends using, if they perceive their friends and family as allowing use, all of those influence use. And those are, to a certain extent, addressed in Prevention Plus Wellness programs, social norms, attitudes, and beliefs. So any other questions and comments? We're just about out of time. I don't want to miss anybody's statement. Let's see here. Here's another statement. This one is from Dari, it looks like, or Danny. I'm sorry. My glasses may not be able to read that correctly, but it may still be too easy to truly tell, but have you seen any difference in the effectiveness of your programs now that they're adapted to virtual? Well, that's a great question. And it is very early. I mean, we certainly haven't done the kinds of rigorous community-based trials that require resources and funding and time and that kind of thing. But we are getting data on it because we do have built-in pre-post tests, including online tests. We are seeing those data and they are very promising. So we are seeing positive effects on the measures of in our surveys, which is behavioral intentions, to engage in the wellness behaviors, to avoid the substance use behaviors, and perceived harmfulness of the substance use behaviors. We are seeing changes in those indicators, and we are seeing very positive feedback from youth in their own words in terms of what did they like, what did they not like. So very instructive feedback and data, both qualitative and quantitative, from virtual. But it really depends on where and how and who's implementing them and the training level, et cetera. So just give you an example. If you implement the online program, Prevention Plus Wellness programs, to one youth, is ideal. If you can implement it to a handful of youth, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, great. You can still have a lot of interaction, communication, verbal and visual. If it has to be implemented in the classroom, an existing classroom, which is definitely the case oftentimes. And if it's a large classroom, let's say it's 20, 25, 30, and you're doing that online, obviously that's not ideal. And that's going to be a challenge. We discussed the challenges in our training and talked to you how to try to keep as many people as possible engaged. And that's a challenge whether you're in person, but it's especially a challenge online. So this could impact the quality and the effectiveness of your program. We try to address that in the training, and so that you get the greatest fidelity and efficacy of your program. So thank you so much for that question. I think we're done. I don't think there's any other questions. Let me just check one more time the Q&A, make sure I haven't missed anybody. I don't want to leave anybody out if they've asked a question. And let me just check one more time. Again, thank you for all you are doing in your regions. And I will follow up later today. Everyone will receive an email from me who's registered for this, and you'll receive a 1 hour completion, CEU completion certificate a PDF of the slides and a link to the recorded session. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a great afternoon. Please be safe, protect yourselves, and if there's anything we can do, let me know. You can reach us at preventionpluswellness.com. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.